Captain Elias Ward stood tall in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, his uniform still marked with faint scratches from the last battle. The room was filled with towering alien figures, each dressed in ceremonial robes that glittered with symbols of their power. The air carried a strange mix of incense and machinery, a reminder that this place was both ancient and modern. He had been summoned here after the victory at Daenerys, where his leadership had saved an entire coalition, fleet from destruction. Humans were still considered newcomers in the wider galaxy, and many saw them as reckless and wild. But Elias had proven himself again and again. His courage, discipline, and refusal to back down had earned him respect, even from species that distrusted humans. He expected the council to thank him with the usual tokens of honor, medals, perhaps, a ship upgrade, maybe even a land grant on one of the colony worlds. But when the central speaker rose, Elias's sharp eyes caught something unusual. Guards entered from the side, not carrying weapons or treasures, but escorting a figure draped in silver chains of ceremony. It was a woman. She walked with her head held high despite the symbolic bindings, her dark hair shining under the chamber lights. Her skin carried a faint glow, the natural shimmer of her species, and her eyes, deep violet, did not look at the council, but straight ahead, unflinching. The guard stopped beside Elias and stepped back. The speaker's voice echoed, "Captain, Elias Ward of Earth, for your unmatched service in the defense of the Coalition, the Council grants you this gift. Liara, daughter of House Serenth. May she honor you as you have honored us." The chamber fell silent. Elias's heart sank. A gift? A person? His fists tightened at his sides. He was a soldier, not a slave master. He looked at Liara, and she looked back, her gaze sharp like a blade. There was no gratitude in her eyes, only fire and pride. He bowed his head slightly, controlling his anger. To refuse openly would insult the council and possibly risk his world's standing, but to accept without question would be to dishonor himself. He took a careful breath. "I serve the Coalition because it is right," Elias said evenly. "Not for gifts. Still, I will accept your offering with respect." Liara's lips curled into a faint smirk, but it was not amusement. It was defiance. The council members nodded, satisfied, and the ceremony moved on. Elias could feel every stare in the chamber. Some aliens looked curious, others smug, as though watching a strange test. To them this might have been tradition or politics, but to Elias, it felt wrong. When the session ended, Liara was released, into his care. The chains were removed, and she stood beside him, arms crossed, her expression cold. "You must be pleased," she said in a low voice, her accent sharp but clear. "A human soldier with a noble prize." Elias glanced at her. "I don't see you as a prize." "Then what am I, a burden, a trophy?" Her words cut like knives, but beneath them Elias sensed pain. "You are free," he said quietly. "Or at least you should be." Liara let out a bitter laugh. "Tell that to the council. They sold me to you like a jewel in a market." Elias did not reply. There were no words strong enough to erase the insult she had suffered. Instead, he motioned toward the exit. "Come, we'll talk aboard my ship." The walk through the council's grand halls was tense. Aliens of many species stopped to watch them pass, the human soldier and the alien woman at his side. Whispers followed them, but Elias ignored them. Liara, however, walked with her chin high, refusing to show weakness. When they reached his vessel, the Resolute, the crew lined up in respect. They had heard rumors of the council's strange gift. Some looked confused, others uneasy. Elias could see their questions, but he gave no explanation. "This is Liara," he said simply. "She will be traveling with us. Treat her as you would treat me." Liara raised an eyebrow at that, clearly surprised. She had expected to be treated as less, perhaps as a servant. Instead, Elias was offering her equality, yet she did not soften. Inside the ship, Elias guided her to a private cabin. It was small but clean, with a bed, desk, and viewing screen that showed the stars outside. "This will be yours," he said. She looked around, then fixed her violet eyes on him. Do you think this makes up for what was done to me? A room. Polite words? No, Elias admitted. But it's a start. For a moment, silence hung between them. Liara finally turned to the window, gazing at the endless stars. You know nothing of me, human. You don't know my people, my house, or the shame that burns in me now. Then tell me, Elias said calmly. Let me understand. Her jaw tightened. Why would I waste my words on you? Elias stepped back toward the door. Because I'll listen. He left her there with her thoughts, knowing that trust would not come quickly. He could still feel her eyes on his back as the door closed. Later, as the ship departed from the council station, Elias sat alone in his quarters. He reviewed the day's events, anger stirring within him. The council had used him, using their gratitude as a mask for something darker. Liara was not a gift, she was a pawn. He thought of her proud eyes, the way she stood unbroken even in chains. She was not weak. No, she was stronger than many he had fought beside. And now, by fate or politics, her future was tied to his. Elias swore silently to himself. He would not treat her as the council intended. He would protect her dignity, even if she never trusted him. Because he was a soldier, and soldiers fought not for power but for what was right. Far across the ship, Liara sat by the window of her new room. She whispered to herself in her own tongue, words Elias could not hear. They were not curses nor prayers but a vow. She would not bend, not even to this human. Yet deep inside, a small seed of curiosity had been planted. This man, unlike the council, had spoken to her with respect. And though she hated to admit it, part of her wondered if perhaps this human soldier was different from the rest. The journey ahead would decide everything. The Resolute glided through the star lanes, its engines humming with steady power. The crew carried on with their usual duties, but there was an unspoken tension in the air. Everyone had seen the alien woman brought aboard, and though Captain Elias Ward had ordered respect, curiosity could not be silenced. Whispered questions moved through the corridors. Why had the council given her? Who was she really? Inside her cabin, Liara paced back and forth. The stars outside shimmered like diamonds, but she felt no peace. Every glance from the crew earlier had burned into her pride, as if they saw her as an object or a mystery to be solved. She clenched her fists, anger building with every step. She had been trained from birth to lead her people one day, not to be handed away like a piece of trade. Her thoughts were interrupted when the door slid open. Elias stepped inside, calm as always, carrying 2 trays of food. One held human rations, simple but filling. The other was carefully prepared from the ship's alien database, nutrients matched to Liara's species. He placed both on the desk and said nothing at first. Liara narrowed her eyes. So now you play servant? Elias ignored the jab and sat down. You need to eat. War councils and pride won't keep you alive without food. She lifted her chin, refusing to touch the tray. And what if I choose not to eat? Will you order me like the others? Will you chain me again, human? No. His voice was steady. I don't order you. But I will remind you that starving yourself only gives the council exactly what they want. Your silence. For the first time, her expression flickered. She had not expected that answer. But instead of softening, she sat down opposite him, still guarded. She picked up the food slowly, never breaking eye contact, as if eating in front of him was an act of defiance. The silence stretched until Elias spoke again. You know, my crew doesn't understand why the council did this. They think it's politics. It is politics, Liara snapped. You think my people would freely send me here? No. The council wanted me gone. My house was strong, too. Strong. I was a threat to their control. Elias studied her carefully. So they disguised betrayal as generosity. Liara gave a bitter laugh. You're not as foolish as you look, human. Her words stung the pride of any ordinary man. But Elias remained calm. He had faced worse insults on the battlefield. What mattered was understanding her truth. He leaned forward slightly. Liara, I don't see you as a gift. I never will. But now you're here, and like it or not, our fates are tied together. If the council wanted you silenced, then keeping you alive is an act of rebellion in itself. She froze, the food halfway to her mouth. For the first time, Elias saw doubt in her eyes. Why would you care? You gain nothing from protecting me. Because it's right, he said simply, and because I gave my word, to myself, that I wouldn't let them turn you into a pawn. Liara looked away, unwilling to admit the small spark of respect that grew in her heart. She had expected cruelty or arrogance, but instead she found patience and honor. It unsettled her more than hatred ever could. The next day, life aboard the Resolute tested both of them further. Elias insisted Liara walk freely through the ship, though always with a crew escort. Some officers questioned this decision, but Elias stood firm. She is not a prisoner, he reminded them. She is under my protection. When Liara entered the training hall, many eyes followed her. She ignored them, stepping onto the sparring mat. A young ensign laughed quietly and muttered something under his breath about humans babysitting aliens. Liara heard it and reacted. Instantly. Face me, she demanded, pointing at the ensign. The crew hesitated, unsure if Elias would allow it, but Elias folded his arms and nodded. Go on, let her prove herself. The sparring match began, and within seconds Liara's skill became clear. Her movements were sharp, precise, like a blade dancing in the air. She disarmed the ensign in 3 strikes, pinning him to the mat with effortless strength. Gasps filled the hall as she stepped back, victorious. I am no ornament, she declared, her voice cold but strong. Remember that. The crew's perception shifted that day. Some still whispered, but now their whispers carried respect. Elias, watching from the side, allowed himself a faint smile. Liara was beginning to show her true nature, even if she refused to admit it. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Liara found herself standing beside Elias again. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and for once she did not speak with sharpness. You let me fight, she said. You needed to, Elias replied. Not just for yourself, but for the crew. They had to see who you really are. She crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. And what do you see, Captain Ward? A warrior, he said without hesitation. And someone who deserves better than what was done to her. For a long moment, Liara said nothing. Then quietly, she whispered, I still don't trust you. You don't have to, Elias said. Trust is earned, not demanded. Her violet eyes studied him in the starlight, trying to find the weakness in his words. But she found only honesty, and that unsettled her more than anything else. That night, as Liara lay in her cabin, she could not sleep. Memories of her home returned. The halls of her house, the banners of her people, the vows she had sworn to protect them. Now she was far from all of it, caught between pride and survival. And yet, when she thought of Elias, she felt something she had not felt since the council betrayed her, the faintest spark of hope. Elias, too, lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his quarters. He had faced many battles, but none as delicate as this one. Earning Liara's trust would take time, and danger lurked in every corner of galactic politics. Still, he knew one truth above all. If they were to survive what lay ahead, they would have to learn to stand together. The Resolute continued its journey through the stars, carrying with it 2 souls bound by fate, clashing in pride yet slowly, step by step, beginning to understand one another. Days passed aboard the Resolute, and life slowly found its rhythm again. The crew respected Elias's orders and gave Liara her space, though curiosity lingered in their eyes whenever she walked through the halls. Liara herself carried herself, with pride, never bowing her head, but inside her mind storms raged. She still felt torn between bitterness and the strange, calm strength Elias always showed. One evening, as the ship orbited a barren outpost to resupply, Elias received a secret transmission. The message came encrypted, bearing no official seal. He studied the code carefully, then unlocked it. What appeared on the screen made his jaw tighten. "Captain Ward," the voice of an old ally whispered through static. "You must know the Council's gift was not gratitude, it was strategy. House Sarenth grew too powerful. Liara's family had influence enough to challenge their rule. By sending her to you, they believed she would be silenced, humiliated, and her house weakened. They did not honor you, Elias. They used you." The message ended abruptly, leaving silence in its place. Elias leaned back, anger boiling in his chest. He had suspected something was wrong from the beginning, but hearing it confirmed was another matter. He stared at the stars outside the viewport, his fists tightening. The Council had played him like a pawn, and worse, they had betrayed Liara in the cruelest way possible. Later that night, he found her alone in the observation deck, her violet eyes fixed on the swirling nebula beyond. Her figure was calm, but Elias could sense the weight on her shoulders. He stepped closer. "I need to tell you something," he said. Liara did not turn. "Another lecture on food or patience, Captain?" "No," Elias said firmly. "The truth." She slowly faced him, her expression sharp. "What truth?" Elias hesitated for a moment, knowing his words would cut deep. Then he spoke. "The Council never honored me. They feared you. They gave you to me not as reward but as a way to remove you, to weaken your family, to silence your name." For a moment Liara froze. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. Then, as the meaning sank in, her hands trembled. Her pride kept her from showing tears, but fury blazed in her eyes. "I knew it," she whispered, her voice low and cold. "I knew it. My own people betrayed me." Elias stepped closer. "Not your people, the Council. There's a difference, and you should know. I will not be part of their game. You are not their pawn." Liara turned away, hiding her face from him. Her mind was a storm. She had always suspected betrayal, but to hear it confirmed tore at her heart. She remembered the council chamber, the smug looks of the elders, the chains around her wrists. Her honor, her house, her family's legacy, all traded away in a single gesture. For the first time, her shoulders sank. She whispered to herself, in her own language, words Elias could not understand. When she finally spoke again, her voice carried a quiet strength. "And you, human, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you throw me back at them and demand a real prize?" Elias frowned. "Do you truly think that of me?" "I think only of survival," she said bitterly. "And survival means trusting no one." Elias shook his head. "Then trust my actions, not my words. I stood by you when no one else did. I'll keep standing by you, even if the galaxy turns against us." Liara looked at him then, truly looked at him. His eyes held no lies, only determination. Something inside her shifted, though she did not admit it aloud. In the following days, whispers of rebellion reached the Resolute. Independent merchants spoke of unrest in border systems, of noble houses rising quietly against the council's corruption. Liara listened intently, her sharp mind piecing the puzzle together. Her knowledge of political secrets, old alliances, and hidden trade routes began to show its worth. One evening in the strategy room, Elias studied a map of the outer colonies. Liara entered without knocking, her steps confident. "I know this region," she said, pointing at a cluster of systems. "The council pretends they are loyal, but many here resent them. My house once held sway over these worlds." Elias raised an eyebrow. "And now?" "Now they are waiting," Liara replied. "Waiting for a voice strong enough to challenge the council." Her words carried weight, and Elias understood. She was no gift. She was a leader in exile. You could rally them, he said quietly. Liara shook her head. "Not alone, not as a castaway, but with proof of the council's betrayal perhaps, with allies willing to stand beside me." Their eyes met, and Elias realized what she was asking, not just for his protection, but for his partnership. Then, we'll gather proof, Elias said. And when the time comes, we'll make the galaxy hear the truth. For the first time, Liara's expression softened, only slightly. It was not a smile, not yet. But it was the closest thing to trust she had shown him. That night, as the ship sailed quietly through the stars, both Elias and Liara knew their path had changed. No longer were they captain and gift. They were allies, bound not by chains but by shared purpose. But shadows still lingered. The Council would not stay blind forever. Somewhere deep in the galactic core, their enemies were already watching, already planning. And soon, Elias and Liara would be tested in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The Resolute moved carefully through the border systems, its sensors scanning the dark reaches of space. These were dangerous regions, filled with smugglers, raiders, and hidden enemies of the Council. Elias knew traveling here was risky, but it was the only way to gather allies and information. Liara often stood beside him on the bridge, silent but watchful, her sharp eyes reading every flicker of data on the screens. The crew had grown used to her presence. At first, they had treated her with suspicion, but after seeing her skill in training and her proud spirit, many now whispered of her as more than just a council gift. Some called her the Shadow Princess, a name that carried both mystery and respect. Liara never corrected them. One evening, while most of the crew rested, the alarms blared. The ship's lights shifted to red, and the sensors screamed warnings. Elias rushed to the command chair. "Report," he barked. "Multiple contacts," the helmsman shouted. "Unknown ships closing fast. They came from the asteroid field." Elias narrowed his eyes. An ambush. The raiders struck quickly, their ships small and fast, darting like wolves around the Resolute. Energy blasts hammered against the shields, shaking the vessel. The crew scrambled to stations, returning fire, but the enemy numbers kept growing. Liara stepped forward, her voice calm but commanding. "They know this terrain. They want to pin us here. If you fire blindly, you will waste power. Let me guide your gunners. I know these tactics." Elias glanced at her. In that moment, he had a choice. Trust her, or keep control. He gave a single, "Can't you do it?" Liara moved with sharp confidence, calling out targets with precision. "Portside, 3rd asteroid cluster, strike there. 2 ships hidden in the shadows, fire now." The gunners obeyed, and sure enough, the blasts revealed raiders lurking in the rocks. The Resolute destroyed them in seconds. Cheers filled the orb-eyed bridge, but the battle was far from over. More raiders swarmed, and one broke through the defenses, latching onto the hull with magnetic clamps. The alarm screamed again. "Boarders incoming!" Elias drew his sidearm, his eyes blazing. "All hands to repel boarders. Protect engineering and the bridge." The ship shook as explosions rocked the hull. Smoke hissed from damaged panels. Elias moved quickly through the corridors with a team of Marines, meeting the raiders head-on. But to his surprise, Liara followed, a long staff weapon in her hands, one she had taken from the armory without asking. "You shouldn't be here," Elias growled. Liara's violet eyes burned. "Do you think I will hide while others fight? You don't know me at all, Captain." Before he could reply, the raiders burst through the hatch. Armed with blades and blasters, they charged, shouting. In guttural tongues, the battle exploded in the corridor. Elias fought with steady precision, his training turning every movement into survival. But his attention kept flicking toward Liara, and what he saw stunned him. She moved like flowing fire, her staff spinning, with impossible speed, striking enemies with accuracy that no ordinary soldier could match. She disarmed one raider, flipped another to the ground, and struck a third with such force the alien crashed into the wall, groaning in defeat. The crew who fought beside her paused in awe, rallying with renewed courage. Her presence turned fear into fire. Elias himself felt a surge of respect he had not expected. Liara had spoken of her noble blood, but now he saw her true heritage. Warrior training, discipline and honor written in every strike. When the last raider fell, silence filled the corridor, broken only by the sound of heavy breaths. Elias lowered his weapon and looked at her. "You saved lives," he said simply. Liara straightened, her chest rising and falling with effort, her staff still in hand. "I told you. I am no ornament. I will never be a shadow to anyone." The crew around them stared with wide eyes, whispering in awe. To them, she was no longer just a mysterious figure. They had seen her fight like one of their own. Later, in the med bay where the wounded were treated, Elias stood by Liara as the crew passed by, many nodding in silent respect. She noticed it. Her pride satisfied, but her heart unsettled. These humans, whom she had once dismissed, now looked at her not with pity, but with honor. In his quarters that night, Elias finally spoke to her alone. "Why did you stay to fight? You had the chance to escape in the chaos." Liara studied him for a long moment. Her violet eyes softened, though her voice remained steady. "Because I am not a coward, and because leaving you would mean letting the Council's betrayal win. I will not give them that satisfaction." Elias leaned back, thoughtful. "You could have been free of me, yet you chose to fight beside me." A faint shadow of a smile touched her lips. "Perhaps you are not the enemy I thought you were, Captain." Those words lingered in the air between them, heavier than any weapon. For the first time, the wall of mistrust between them began to crack. The next morning, the Resolute continued its journey, scarred but alive. The crew spoke in low voices about Liara's skill, about how she had fought not as a prisoner but as a protector. Some even began to call her the Lady of the Ship. Elias noticed the change too. Where once the crew looked at her with suspicion, now they looked with admiration. And though Liara still held her pride close, he saw something shift in her as well. She no longer stood apart as much. She was beginning to belong. As the stars stretched endlessly ahead, both Elias and Liara knew this battle was only the beginning. Greater dangers awaited, and the Council's shadow still loomed. But for now, something powerful had been born in the fire of combat. Trust. And trust, Elias thought, could be the most dangerous weapon of all. The battle with the raiders had changed everything. The Resolute was damaged but alive, its crew walking with a new sense of pride. And in their whispers, one name had grown louder, Liara. They no longer saw her as a burden or a mystery, but as a fighter who had stood shoulder to shoulder with them. Yet Elias knew that victory in one battle was only a small step. The real danger was still the Council, and their plot stretched farther than he could yet see. That thought weighed on him as the Resolute drifted into orbit around a hidden colony world known for quiet rebellion. Supplies were needed, but more than that, Elias hoped for information. The docking bay was dusty, filled with old ships and cautious workers. As Elias and Liara stepped off the ramp together, he noticed how the colonists' eyes fixed on her. They recognized something in her stance, in her noble bearing. Liara noticed it too, though she said nothing. Inside a dimly lit chamber, they met with a local leader named Veyran, a grizzled trader with sharp eyes. He welcomed Elias with cautious respect, but his gaze lingered on Liara. "You bring dangerous company, Captain," Veyran said quietly. Liara stepped forward before Elias could reply. "You know who I am?" "Yes," Veyran answered, lowering his voice. "Liara of House Sarenth. Many thought you dead, others thought you chained, and now you stand here, alive." Liara's jaw tightened. "The Council betrayed me. They dressed their treachery as ceremony and threw me into exile." Veyran studied her carefully. "If that is true, then you are the living proof of their corruption. With your voice, many houses would rise." Elias leaned forward. "But they will not rise without evidence. Words are not enough against the Council. We need proof of their betrayal." Veyran sighed. "There are whispers, records hidden in the Council's own archives, documents showing how they plotted against noble houses, but no one dares to take them." Liara's violet eyes gleamed with determination. "Then we will dare." Elias nodded in agreement. "If we can bring that proof to light, the galaxy will see the Council for what it is. But we'll need allies to protect it." Veyran looked at them both, then slowly smiled. "Perhaps the galaxy has been waiting for a pair like you, the soldier and the heir." The meeting ended with quiet promises, but the fire inside Liara only burned brighter. That night aboard the Resolute, she stood with Elias in the war room, staring at the map of star systems. "My people once held sway here," she said, pointing at several worlds. "They will listen if they hear my voice again. But they will not follow me if I come alone. They must see strength at my side." Elias met her gaze. "You already have strength. They saw it when you fought the raiders. They'll see it again when you speak." Liara hesitated. Her pride would not let her admit it easily, but she knew he was right. Still, she whispered, "And you? What do you gain from this? Why risk your life for a house not your own?" Elias's voice was steady. "Because if the council can betray you, they can betray anyone, and because I gave my word to protect you. That is enough for me." Her heart stirred at those words, though she turned her eyes back to the map. The next days were filled with tense preparation. The Resolute made careful stops in border systems, sending quiet messages, listening to secret replies. Some answered with caution, others with fear, but a few sent signals of hope. Slowly, threads of resistance began to weave together. One evening, a coded message reached them. It carried the seal of a noble house still loyal to Liara's family. The message read, "We have waited for your return. Bring proof and we will stand with you." Liara read the words aloud, her voice trembling just slightly. For the first time since her exile, she felt the warmth of belonging again. Her people had not forgotten her completely, but danger was never far. The council, alerted by whispers of rebellion, began to brand Elias and Liara as traitors. False. Reports spread across the networks. Claims that the human captain had stolen Liara, that she was leading a conspiracy against peace. When the crew of the Resolute heard the broadcasts, some grew uneasy. But Elias called them all to the assembly hall. Liara stood at his side as he addressed them. "You've heard the council's lies," Elias said, his voice echoing across the room. "But you've also seen the truth with your own eyes. You saw Liara fight for you, bleed for you. You saw her courage when the council tried to bury her name. The choice is yours. Do we bow to the council's lies or do we rise together for what is right?" The crew erupted in cheers, their voices loud and clear. They chose to rise. Liara felt her throat tighten at the sight. These humans, once strangers, now stood with her. For the first time since her exile, she felt not just pride but hope. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, she turned to Elias. The stars stretched endlessly before them, but her eyes were fixed on him. "You are a strange man, Captain Ward," she said softly. "Most would have used me for power, but you fight for me instead. Why?" Elias gave a small, tired smile. "Because humanity was once seen as weak. We were tested, doubted, pushed aside. But we stood together, and we earned respect. I see the same in you. You deserve that same chance." Liara studied him in silence. She wanted to argue, to hold on to her pride. But deep inside she knew the truth. She was no longer walking this path alone. The galaxy was beginning to shift. Rumors of rebellion grew stronger. Alliances whispered, in secret halls. And the council tightened its grip in fear. But Elias and Liara stood side by side, their bond forged not by chains but by choice. The soldier and the heir. The human and the alien. Two voices against an empire. And together, they were rising. The galaxy was stirring. Across border worlds, whispers of rebellion had turned into shouts. Elias Ward's name was spoken in admiration by soldiers, and Liara of House Sarenth was remembered as the rightful heir betrayed by the council. The Resolute had become more than a ship. It was a symbol of hope. But symbols alone would not bring down the council. Proof had to be shown. And so Elias and Liara prepared for their boldest mission yet, breaking into the council's own archives, to reveal their treachery to the galaxy. The plan was dangerous, bordering on impossible. The archives were locked within the central tower on the council's homeworld, guarded by fleets and armies. Yet Elias's eyes carried no fear as he briefed his crew. This is our chance, he said firmly. The council thinks themselves untouchable. Tonight we prove them wrong. The crew nodded, loyal and ready. Liara stood at his side, her violet eyes shining with determination. The Resolute slipped through hidden routes known only to smugglers and rebels. For days, they traveled in silence, each crew member preparing for what might be their final stand. Elias spent long hours with Liara, reviewing maps, studying guard rotations, and planning every move. You could still turn back, he told her once, late at night. If we fail, the council will hunt you forever. Liara's voice was steady. I was hunted the moment they betrayed me. If I must fall, I would rather fall fighting beside you than live in chains. Her words struck Elias deeply, though he said nothing. At last, the Resolute reached the homeworld. Disguised as a supply vessel, it slipped past the outer patrols and descended toward the city of shining towers. The council's palace rose at the center like a blade of crystal, its lights piercing the night sky. The infiltration began. Elias, Liara, and a small team moved through underground passages, avoiding patrols, climbing service shafts. Every step carried danger, yet Liara's steady presence kept Elias focused. Her knowledge of the palace from her youth guided them, while his soldiers' instincts kept them alive. Finally, they reached the archives, a chamber of glowing data pillars stretching into the shadows. Elias connected a device, downloading records. Line after line appeared, evidence of the council's schemes, their orders to strip Liara's family of power, their plans to weaken houses that resisted them. It was all there, but alarms, suddenly, blared. Guards poured into the chamber, weapons ready. The trap had been sprung. Elias raised his blaster. We hold them until the data finishes, no matter what. Liara gripped her staff weapon, standing at his side. Then let them come. The fight was fierce. Guard after guard fell as the small team resisted with desperate strength. Elias fought with precision, covering Liara's flank, while Liara moved like fire, her staff striking down enemies with impossible speed. For every enemy defeated, more arrived. At last, the device beeped, the download complete. Elias tore it free and shouted, "We have what we need, fall back." The team retreated through the corridors, alarms echoing everywhere. Outside, the Resolute broke through defenses, blasting open a path. The crew pulled them aboard, engines roaring as the ship leapt into the sky. Enemy fighters pursued, but the Resolute raced faster, fueled by determination. Once they cleared the atmosphere, Elias transmitted the data to rebel channels across the galaxy. Screens lit up in every system, revealing the council's betrayal to all. The evidence spread like wildfire, undeniable and clear. The galaxy saw the truth at last. The council tried to deny it, but the tide had already turned. Noble houses rose in rebellion, fleets declared independence, and colonies broke, free of council control. The once untouchable rulers were exposed as liars and manipulators. On the Resolute's bridge, cheers erupted as reports came flooding in. Allies had taken up arms, and the council's fleets were falling back. The galaxy was changing before their very eyes. Liara stood tall, her face illuminated by the glow of the stars. For the first time since her exile, her honor had been restored. Yet she did not stand alone. Elias was beside her. "You've done it," he said softly. "Your name is free again." Liara turned to him. "We did it, Elias. Without you, I would still be chained in silence. You gave me back my voice." The crew watched quietly as the two leaders faced each other, the bond between them clear to all. In the days that followed, the council collapsed. New alliances were forged, and Liara's people welcomed her back as a rightful heir. But when her advisors urged her to return home and rebuild her house, she shook her head. "I will lead," she said firmly. "But I will not leave the one who fought beside me when all others abandoned me." Elias tried to protest. "Your people need you." "And they shall have me," Liara replied. "But they must understand. I am not their prisoner, nor anyone's pawn. My path is my choice, and I choose to walk it with you." Those words spread quickly, becoming legend. The galaxy no longer saw Liara as a gift or a castaway princess. She was the heir who fought back, and the human soldier who stood beside her became part of her story forever. Together, Elias and Liara traveled to world after world, not as conquerors, but as symbols of unity. Wherever they went, people whispered of their bond, the human and the heir, the soldier and the princess. Their story gave courage to others, reminding all that dignity and loyalty could defy even the greatest of empires. And though many challenges still lay ahead, one truth was clear: the Council's chains had been broken and a new future had begun. The stars stretched wide before them, endless and full of promise. Elias looked at Liara, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself a smile. "Ready for whatever comes next?" he asked. Liara's violet eyes gleamed with fire and hope. "As long as you're beside me, Captain Ward, I fear nothing." The Resolute leapt into the stars, carrying them toward new horizons. Their journey was far from over, but their legend had already begun, proof that even in the darkest times one human soldier and one betrayed heir could rise together and change the fate of galaxies.